month ago, it seemed like the only problem, only thing Bostonians had to worry about was that the Celtics and the Bruins victory parade wouldn't, clash. But Bruins out and Celtics fighting. I mean, what's the mood on the ground there?
Yeah, I was definitely one of those people that I wouldn't say I got cocky or arrogant about it, but I absolutely in the occasional interview floated, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we could have a dual championship duck boat parade? Wouldn't that be fun? As a hockey and basketball team ever won a championship in the same season and been able to celebrate like that in the same city. So yeah, obviously that blew up. I'm not, I guess on the Bruins, if we were to start more negative, I never would have seen them go out in the first round. So I don't want to say I saw that coming. But what I will say is that, what has always just sort of scared me about the nature of hockey, just the way the sport works, is that, if you get a hot goalie on the other side or your guy who's great isn't playing great, I mean, that can swing a series in a hurry. And we can see an 8-1 in terms of seeding. And that's just not something that's totally improbable or never happens in that sport. So, I don't think Bruins fans, despite the insane regular season, the greatest regular season points and wins wise we've ever seen in history, never mind Bruins history, league history, I think there was still just a little bit of, sort of tight, when considering the Florida Panthers did play them very well during the regular season. So this is the reigning President's Cup trophy. So this was not going to be a walk in the park, but I don't think anybody realistically saw them going down in round one. But then you start to factor in Patrice Bergeron. The captain was ineffective when he did play and missed 4 games also with an injury. And David Krejci, their second line center, missed a bunch of time. And of course, Linus Ullmark, again, going back to the goalies, was certainly not his Vezina Trophy. Ultimately, I think winning self, battling through an injury, and Jim Montgomery should have made a goalie change earlier in that series than he did. And I was calling for it at the time, so that's not revisionist history. But yeah, they lost. As far as the Celtics go, they have played so terribly and not like themselves, really throughout much of the playoffs, including the Atlanta series, never mind what has gone on against a Philly team that, they've bounced that team and Joel Embiid on their knee for years, like little children, and gone into this series against obviously the MVP in Embiid, who is not fully healthy. People wondered going into the series, is he even going to play in this series, or at what percentage of himself will he be if he does play? And he's had a couple of, all right, that's the MVP. And James Harden has had, a multiple time MVP, has had MVP-like performances, really turning back the clock in a couple of these games. And so, now what was once a best of 7 becomes a best of 5 and a best of 3, and now it's a best of 1 with a game 7 totally wrecking Mother's Day for all the moms out there. But I certainly hope that Boston prevails. I just think it's so funny, especially from a gambling perspective. It's so funny how, C's drop game 5 and fall down 3-2 in the series, and all of a sudden they're no longer the betting favorites to win the championship, and you win game 6 to force a game 7 back in your building, and you vault right back to number 1, and you can get, great money on the Sixers to win the title if you believe that is how it's going to shake out. So money moves like crazy and odds moves like crazy, and everything that, you already know and your listeners already know. But I do believe, I don't think it's with full homerism, maybe mild homerism. I do think the Celtics are going to figure it out at home and advance to the next round. And then we get to talk about how scared everybody is of Jimmy Butler and the PTSD that we have with him.
Yeah. I was speaking with someone who works for a sports book that is licensed in the state of Massachusetts. And I was just trying to get him to riff off, wow, that's how about that? The local team lost, but it couldn't have been bad for the old sports book there. And obviously, they had a huge amount of liability on the Bruins because they were great, and folks are going to bet on them, especially when sports betting launches in a new market like that.
Yeah.
What's the easiest bet to do? Well, the Bruins are going to win tonight. Bet that. But wow, I mean, what was the mix of just anger, sadness, just amazement, and just being really pissed off at the Bruins that they lost the folks money too, because they had to have been betting on.
Look, I mean, it elevated my emotions because it cost me a good chunk of my very early on legalized bankroll, because I had the Bruins winning that series. I don't think I got cocky about it. I think I just picked them to win the series. But the Celtics, I had -2.5 games against the Hawks. Of course, it goes to a game 6 because they couldn't put it away. I had the Celtics -1.5 games against the Sixers. They can't do it in 6. So the local teams, honestly, are probably costing me more money than they are winning me. But as a fan, because I am a fan, I do sit there and say, because I'm not like as a gambler, I am never, I'm not someone who does this professionally. I do it more than the casual person. I'm in a, without getting into specifics, I'm in a fair amount per night, but I'm not, I'm not in so much that, barring some crazy parlay that wins me tens of thousands of dollars, I'm never going to get rich off of this, and I'm never going to go broke off of this. It's just kind of, inexpensive hobby, if you will, on a nightly basis that is either lucrative or costly, and the day shakes out however it shakes out. But when you combine lost money, lost potential earnings or winnings, if you will, it's not earnings, but winnings, with the losses of your teams as well, when that compounds it becomes a very frustrating night. There are a couple, I'll joke with friends, there are a couple of nights that the Celtics have ultimately lost the game, but I'll have a profitable night, and it sort of eases the pain, or vice versa. When they'll win, but I'll have a terrible betting night, I'll say, well, at least they won. There's more kicks at the can with all of this. But when both things happen, when I get killed on, Tatum props or something like that, and they lose the game, that just puts me in a bad mood.
Yeah. It's only been a couple of months for the legal market, but do you get a sense for like what the you must, because you're on the radio each night, but the betting scene there? I mean, certainly there must have been people who are using offshore sites that hopefully converted over, but as you know, the national sports books that come in, they also want the dabblers, because that's good for business, because they bet small, but they're probably going to lose, and that helps keep the lights on. I mean, are folks just hammering the home team, or are they doing, as you said, a more savvy sort of better picking and choosing markets, not just I hope we win and I'm going to bet $5?
Well, I guess what I would say is, most people who gamble, at whatever stage that they gamble, of how seriously they take it, if you are a professional, if you're sharp, if you're someone that even if you're someone who's like slightly more than average in terms of your volume on a nightly basis, you're probably looking for help. And what I mean by that is, maybe you're paying for discords, or maybe you're paying for, projection tools. You're not just betting on intuition and feeling, because more often than not, when you do that, you're going to lose. If you're just betting with your heart or your head all the time, with no real sort of research that goes into it, you're probably going to lose. And I would bet that, the newbies, the novices, the people that just are excited to download the whichever books app on your phone, or even multiple books, to take advantage of all the early promotions and build up various bankrolls, and but they're doing it for the quote unquote free money. They're not doing it to shop odds like professionals would do, who obviously have multiple books at their disposal. And I think those people are, to your point, it's $5 here, $10 here, maybe 20, $25 there. But again, it's just for fun. It's just to have some skin in the game, some action, to, a little extra rooting interest while you're sitting up at night. Would you otherwise be watching a Nuggets Suns game if you're a casual basketball fan? Maybe, but probably not. And so, let me throw a little money on the spread here, on the live money line, or whatever it may be, that's going to gauge your interest. So, gambling, I would think, has probably really helped TV ratings, especially around, this area, for people that are so new to this, because it's only been a couple months of legalized betting since it went live mobile on March 10th. But I think that is the general excitement among people in my friend group and listeners, and even for me, is just the wow, like I have, again, Vegas at my fingertips. It's crazy how much stuff I can bet on, and how easy this is. And as long as you're being responsible with it, and whether that's setting up the parameters on the apps to do so for yourself, if you don't have that self-control, or just going at it like this is just a fun hobby and doing it that way. But I think it's such a fun space to be in. I think, more like, I haven't heard from anybody who's, oh my God, this is the worst thing, I'm losing my shirt, how could I have ever gotten into this? It's the alternative. This is so much fun. And hey, like, guess what? I just hit a a $10 parlay, a no sweat parlay that one of the books was offering, and I came away with $150, and I'm having the best night ever. So, I think there's right now there's a lot of positivity around this. If I answered your question, I know I
You
kind of
did. You did. I didn't have this written down on my brilliant list of queries, but do you find that people care much that for the most part, college betting, in-state college betting is prohibited? I know some tournaments. I don't know whether the bean pot was allowed. I would think that would be popular, but I mean, do people care generally?
No, not that I've heard anyway, or not at this point. But obviously, we're not at college football season yet. And people could around here bet on March Madness, which was really a top priority. People wanted the opportunity to bet on that. I think that was, other than just the newness and the excitement, I think that was a big part of the reason for the initial spike. Obviously, once everything went legal, it happened right before March Madness, and so it was, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna parlay team outcomes, or I'm betting on my alma mater, or I want a fair amount. I was just sitting at a bar one night with friends having a couple of drinks on a Friday or Saturday night. I don't have any particular viewing interest more often than not in women's basketball, as an example. I just historically haven't watched a lot of it, but got kind of caught up in the Caitlin Clark story, and I'm watching Iowa, and I think it was the Final Four at this point, and threw down a sprinkled a sum of money, not a large sum of money, but a little bit when they were down on them coming back, and they did. And it was, all right, I can't wait to watch the championship game.
I love this.
When otherwise I might not have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, and that was happening a lot with friends of mine when we were out. So I mean, we'll get together now, not weekly, but on a random Fridays or Saturdays after the kids go to bed, go out to a sports bar, whatever's on, and let's just sit there, hang out, have a couple drinks, couple laps, and throw a little bit of money down and see what happens.
Yeah, interesting. The joke is made often, and I've made it too many times, about how much the Boston crowd supports locals. I mean, the easy joke, and I mean, I've seen this, man. I'm sure you have too. If there's 50 people in line at Dunkin' and there's one sucker over there at Starbucks, you guys just love that stuff. So DraftKings, I think, won the first month. So do you think that'll continue? But by the same token, you got Portnoy, who's a local guy, and Barstool was way down. I think they might have been like 3% or something. Do you think that DraftKings, because it's from there, it's really ubiquitous? There was that logo on the green Mons.
Mm-hmm.
No, on that light tower thing. I'm using all those architectural terms, but do you think that Boston and Massachusetts will support the locals above all else? Because FanDuel is the national leader generally in market share.
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly say that DraftKings has signage all over the place locally, and so it's always right there. You see it, whether it's on the dasher boards at a Bruins game, or it's there at a Celtics game, or on they've got it around the park, the logo at Fenway. Certainly there's a DK Lounge at Gillette, and I can't even imagine what's going to happen from a sports betting perspective when we get to football season with that being legalized. I mean, the money is obviously going to skyrocket, whether it's betting local, or whether it's the fact that it's there, and the TV campaigns, and you're seeing it all the time. I don't know. I mean, I guess some of that could be, subliminal to people. I really couldn't speak to it. But what I will say is the vast majority of people that I know that are on the apps and that are doing this, I tend to hear DraftKings first. They do, there is dabbling in some of the others, whether it's FanDuel or MGM or Caesars. Honestly, I don't hear too much with respect to Portnoy. It's usually those other ones, but DraftKings is more often than not the first book out of people's mouths, whether that's a branding and advertising success, or whether it's betting local. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, obviously, sports personalities, sports heroes matter in every town. But it's interesting. I think FanDuel got Rob Gronkowski to that little field goal kicking stunt for the Super Bowl, and DraftKings got David Ortiz. I mean, that's a
and
clash.
Edelman.
I mean, who wins
Edelman
that?
I can't remember where Edelman is. He might be BetMGM.
He might be, yeah. But didn't Chara sign with someone, I think? But
DraftKings. Yeah, so DraftKings,
yeah.
And that was, obviously the marketing blitz for all of these books when everything went legal. Like you said, you saw Gronk in the FanDuel commercials for DraftKings. There was David Ortiz and Lenny Clark and, Allie Raceman, who's a local gymnast. You had, Lenny Clark, local comedian. So some others as well. Brian Scalabrine, who's kind of a Celtics cult hero locally. He's on the broadcast. So, DraftKings has certainly leaned local in terms of its personalities and sports personalities. But I think that, again, speaks to sort of looking at your customer base. And, if we want to attract people that love Boston and love these people, then that might be a way to do it. Obviously, I can't speak to the ins and outs of how those meetings and strategy sessions go. But again, like you said, you look at the numbers, and so far, I think it's probably working.
Back to what we were talking about a second ago, DraftKings, obviously born and raised there. Boylston Street, I guess, is their address. I couldn't find it when I looked one time. And Portnoy's from the area. Obviously, Barstool is a gambling outlet now. Made his bones with his little gambling newsletter. It sort of gives me the perception, like, man, Boston is a betting town, and it was doing this way before it got legalized. Is that sort of area that an uncle knew a guy? I mean, was that the case? And if so, do you think that these folks converted over, probably chasing bonuses if they're that into it? But what's the lay of the ground there?
Yeah, I mean, I know an awful lot of people that really, other than if they were in Vegas or something like that, never really gambled until it went legal, and then got all excited about it, like you said, chasing bonuses, and now are in the space on a daily basis, more or less. But no question, there are, I also know a number of people, and I can't speak to whether they've converted. I just never asked them, but a number of people that have been using the various sites or overseas books or whatever, and have been gambling for years and years and years, and that's their brand, it's their reputation. In some cases, it's their livelihood. So there are a lot of people around here, both in the media, or just people that obviously I wouldn't even know that do whatever it is that they do for a living, that gamble on the side. It's just popular. It is that kind of state where we are attracted to having a like I said, a little more interest in a sporting event or whatever it may be. I mean, I know people that like to bet on award season. They'll bet on the Oscars. They'll bet on whatever it is. So it's not even just sports. And some people just like to bet. I mean, I'll have a it's sort of it's really no different than like a poker mentality, right? I mean, just the amount of people that'll get together once a month with their buddies to play poker, just because, I mean, yeah, it might be a night out with your friends, but they're not playing for free. So there's part of it.
Yeah. Well, your show, The Gambler, is just so perfectly positioned for this. I mean, tell everyone about the show. And I mean, you guys are on nightly. I was listening to the podcast version on iHeart. I mean, it's a really lively discussion, and it's interesting how really sort of like where sports media is going, because you're talking about the games, and you're not just talking about lines and what you made or whatever, but it's really synthesized. So tell me about that show and why that's an interesting thing for you.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, first and foremost, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here with you. I've said this to friends, I've said this to family. We've only been doing the show for 2 weeks. It's called The Gambler with Adam Kaufman. It's on WRKO 680 locally. It streams, obviously, as we like to joke, it streams, it's available worldwide because it's on the internet. So anything available on the internet, you can find it. And so we've got the daily podcast that accompanies the show. It's typically just a shorter version of the show that comes out right after we sign off at midnight. The shows 10 to midnight, and then it sort of sets people up as far as placing their bets and making their picks for the podcast. Anyway, the in show is a lot of live betting and responding to what just happened, because obviously at 10 p.m. Eastern, games have either just wrapped up or they're in the process of wrapping up. You got a whole bunch of games that are in prime time or West Coast, or again, football season's going to be crazy. Playoffs are crazy between basketball and hockey. A lot of stuff that is going on while you're on, and so there's just a lot to react to. And we really love sweating our bets and listeners' bets and guests' bets, and building stuff out together. It is truly, I can't think of a time that I have had more fun hosting a show such as this one. And I've hosted radio shows, and I've done a lot of really cool stuff in this industry for years and years and years, be it radio, TV, internet, print, whatever. This is just, it's so, to your point, it's so lively, and I hope more people, obviously we're brand new, but I hope more and more people will continue to find us as they have. Our podcast numbers and everything are going up by the day, which is great to see as we build awareness. But it's just, it's the community that we have, whether, again, it's the listeners. Obviously I'm there every night. Dan Watkins is a contributing voice who's there every night. EJ Pacheco's our producer. But what really makes the show, as highly as I think of all of us, right? What really makes the show are our guests. We have industry experts on for the bulk of every single show, from, you name it. I mean, wherever you as a gambler are out there reading advice from, or getting your picks from, or shopping services from, or, they're on TV and you're watching them. I mean, we're getting guests from every different sort of facet of the business, and people that are coming on and giving us real hard-hitting gambling analysis that my only concern right now would be, if I were to have one, is that we're too in the weeds and appealing, maybe too much so to the experienced gambler, or to the sharp, as opposed to someone who is brand new at this, and that we may need to dial it back in the future, or have like learn to gamble type segments, or whatever it may be, so as to not lose the novices that tune in for 5 minutes and say, I don't know what they're talking about, this is too much. But it's so easy in this space, when you're part of this space, to get lost in that stuff and just assume everybody knows what you know, because that's not the case. And the goal for us is to get everybody, obviously, to that point. So it's so fun and loose and goofy and self-deprecating, and we celebrate our hits, we own our misses. It's a blast. I'm really enjoying it.